Hi, my name is Megan Jelanek, and I'm going to talk about how I use physics in my everyday life. So, just to start off, what is physics? Physics, the most basic definition given straight in the dictionary, is the study of matter and its energy. So, anything that exists has matter, and anything can either be moving, it can be sitting still, anything that contains energy and is matter is what physics is looking at, studying the relationship between the two. So, one of the most basic concepts in physics is Newton's law of inertia. So, what that says is that an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an opposing force. So, pretty much anyone can see this in their day-to-day life. As long as you're in a car, you've seen Newton's law of inertia. So, I see it on my daily commute to work, to the grocery store, back home, everywhere. The way we're going to use it with a car. Think about the law of inertia. A car continues to move until the brakes are applied or comes to a stop. Or could have come to a stop by hitting another car, hitting a wall. So, people like to argue this and say, well, what if it says a law of inertia says that an object in motion must stay in motion until acted upon by an opposing force. But if you hit the gas pedal and then just pick your foot up off the gas pedal, eventually you're going to come to a stop, but you never came in contact with an opposing force. But that's false. The way that law is still true is that the opposing force in this case is the friction between the road and the tires. Road and tires creates friction. That friction is now the opposing force that creates the car to come to a stop. So, the car continues to move till the brakes are applied. Friction between the road and tires brings the car to a stop. Or, worst case scenario, car hits another car, hits a wall. In that case, the passenger would also continue to move forward like they were until acted upon, just like the Newton's law says, by another force. So, let's look at if a car is flying down the interstate going 80 miles per hour, comes up on a big traffic jam, hits the back of another car. That car is now going to come to a halt, going from 80 miles per hour to nothing because it hit an opposing force. But the passenger that's inside is going to keep moving at that 80 miles per hour until that passenger comes in contact with an opposing force. Hopefully, that opposing force is a seatbelt. Then the person's going to keep flying forward until that seatbelt lock clicks in, hit the seatbelt, and then come to a stop. Airbag gets deployed after the car smashes into the back of another car. You're going to keep flying forward till the passenger hits that airbag, and then comes to a stop. Then, worst case scenario, absolutely. The person, let's say they weren't wearing a seatbelt, airbag never got deployed. The person's going to keep flying forward at the same rate of speed that the car was just going at, 80 miles per hour, flying through, gets ejected from the car until another force hits it. So let's say it's the other car that they hit the ground, hit the windshield. The passenger's going to keep flying forward even though they weren't using any energy to be in motion. They're still in motion even though they're in the car. So anything that is in motion is going to stay in motion until it's acted upon by an opposing force. We see that in almost everything we do on a day-to-day basis. Car's the easiest example that almost everyone does every day. So, let's look at another example. First off, let's talk about different types of energy. There's two basic types of energy. There's potential energy, which is the stored energy of an object possessed by the position, or kinetic energy, which is the energy of an object in motion. So, the way we're going to look at this, how it can be used in real life, maybe not so much day-to-day life unless you work at a theme park, it's on a roller coaster. So, how we're going to look at this, we're going to start on the right side of this image. When you hop on a roller coaster, the car's normally going to start off by making some sort of ascent up a mountain, up a track. So, So let's look at how that cart is going up right there. As it's going up, it's storing a lot of potential energy. It's not using it, it's storing all this energy because the motor is taking it up the track. So it's storing all this energy. The second it reaches the top, now we're going to look to the left side of the image. Once it reaches the top, that potential energy is then converted into kinetic energy. Once it's converted to kinetic energy, that means that the object is now using that energy. It's in motion. So the cart's going to go flying down the track. It's using up all the kinetic energy that it's just storing. It's getting rid of all the kinetic energy, using up all its kinetic energy, going down to empty, reaches the bottom of that track. It's going to go up that next little. So this one's a little more personal for how it relates to my life. I work at a physical therapy clinic, outpatient orthopedic clinic, and so what we do is different types of what physical therapy is. We use exercises, different types of manual treatments such as massage, soft tissue work, and then other modalities to relieve pain, help people that are post-op gain their strength and muscle back, any sort of injury or pain. Is what we treat by using these a little more conservative rather than going into surgery if they don't have to. So, first thing we're going to look at is how equilibrium is seen in a physical therapy clinic. So, first we're going to talk about what equilibrium is. Equilibrium is the sum of net forces equaling zero. So, kind of the easiest way to think about it is everything's happy, everything's equal, everything's just no change. Nothing's stronger than the other, it's all equal. How we see this in a PT clinic is during cervical traction. So, first let's just do a little overview on what cervical traction is. So, your cervical spine is that top part of your spine around your neck, down past your shoulder blades a little bit, or down past your shoulders. So, cervical traction is used when we have patients come in complaining of neck pain, pinched nerve, you may have heard of when that nerve is getting pinched down on, creates pain down the arms, tingling sensations. So cervical traction is a device that we use on patients with any of those complaints. There's laying down devices that we use in our clinic. They're standing up or sitting. What it does is it stretches the base of the skull, grabs onto the base of the skull, and pulls it away from the rest of the cervical spine, allowing gaps in between each of those vertebrae into those discs, where those discs sit, to create space in there. Once there's space in between all of those discs that are being compressed down on, the nerves can, in a sense, breathe easier. We'll look at these pictures. How to reach equilibrium with cervical traction. Look at the left side of the image. You can see in the picture of the girl, her neck sitting forward, that spine is really compressed down on. Look at the spine. So the yellowish part, yellow beige part, is the vertebrae. They're all sitting equal. There's this little white disc in between. You see where in between that A is the disc that's being really compressed down on, bulging out a little bit onto that nerve, that yellow with the orange. Orange is where it's being compressed on, that pinched nerve. So what we do for this is you can see on the right side picture of the girl, her neck's now straight. She has on a standing device, pump some air into it. It's going to pull your spine as straight as it can go. It's working against gravity, pulling up on your spine as much as it can, taking pressure off of those discs. So now they can breathe easier. There's enough space for that nerve to get through that channel right there. So traction device allows space between the disc and allows the opposing forces. The opposing forces in this case are gravity and those muscles that are pushing the spine up to hold up that spinal column. So, like I just said, those different forces, gravity and the muscles that keep the spinal column up, that's what we see when we see just the spine looks straight, but it's just being compressed down on, causing that nerve pinch. There's multiple opposing forces. that's when you can start to see scoliosis. This isn't the type of scoliosis that people have as their kids. This is a little bit more muscles and gravity aren't working together. Typically one's stronger than the other, not equilibrium, and that can create a little bit of scoliosis that can be reverted back to a straight, healthy spine. So let's look at a straight, healthy spine. Let's put some gravity on it. It's going to compress down on it. Quadratus lumborum, also known as the QL muscle, sits on the inside of the lumbar spine, low back, pulls down on either side of the spine. Let's say that right side's tighter, so now you're having gravity pushing down on your spine. You have that QL muscle pulling down on the right side, a little curved. And then the erector spinae, which is a muscle that runs along the side of the entire spinal column from top to bottom. So that's what's keeping it held up. So you got gravity pushing down, QL muscle pulling to the right, erector spinae muscles pulling up. All of those totally different forces. If one of those is stronger than the other, you're going to create an uneven spine. Could be pulling to the right a little bit, create scoliosis. So another way that we use physics and physical therapy is the lever arms and torque. Especially seen in the knee, it's kind of one of the easiest places to see it, although we do use it other places. We have a lot of patients come in post-op knee or just knee pain. Either way, especially post-op, there's a lot of atrophy, so the muscle just pretty much, in a sense, dies as soon as they come out of surgery. Come out of surgery, lots of atrophy of that quad muscle. So best way to activate that quad muscle, get that quad muscle strengthening, it's an exercise we call long arc quad. Just like this man is doing in the picture, sit up in a chair and then kicking one leg out. Really isolates that quad muscle, creates a long lever arm. Like Dr. Aaron Swanson describes as torque as being dependent on 3 different variables: the amount of force, angle of application, and the length of the lever arm. So in this case, that length of the lever arm is real long. We're trying to make it as long as we can to really make that quad work. The angle of application is, in this case, there's no weight on his ankle. Once people get further along, progressed in their rehab, may have an ankle weight on to their ankle, but that angle of application is where that weight is. So we're putting it at the end of their ankle, not up by their knee. We're going to add it to the end of the ankle so there's a larger angle of application. And the amount of force, like this man's doing, the force is just the gravity. In our case, we will start with gravity and then slowly work up to higher amounts of weight for that amount of force to be put on. This is the best way to isolate that quad muscle and really get the quad muscle firing up on its own, get the strength back. Since that lever arm is really long, it's causing the quad to do more work to bring up the force of the weight. So that is how I use physics in my everyday life, and here is my reference page.